Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to a fantastic webinar today, Building Brands, Product, Price, and Story, hosted by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. My name is Dale Sky Jones, and I am the Chancellor of Oaksterdam University, the first and longest running training for the cannabis industry in the world, and I am excited to be your moderator today. We are here because the Department of Cannabis Regulation has provided the Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance, or BLC program, to assist equity entrepreneurs in the city of Los Angeles with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. Please visit cannabis.lacity.gov for more announcements on the ever-improving BLC program. For more new live webinars and different subjects and experts, checklists, worksheets, and other management tools that you can download and use straight out of the LMS, and links for accessing expert consultants in the BLC coaching program. This connects applicants and business owners with seasoned cannabis subject matter experts, and we are dropping the link in chat to sign up for these coaching services. I highly recommend that you take this course and explore the LMS if you have not done so already. Before we get started, we're just going to take a moment to review housekeeping rules. Please note this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed after the editing process on DCR's website in the LMS I just mentioned. You will be muted with your cameras off for the duration of the webinar. That means your camera and audio functions will not be available during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all the experts. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on today's topic. Please do ask questions about today's subject in the Q&A box. We're gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a dedicated Q&A session in the last 30 minutes of today's event. You are encouraged to utilize the Q&A box at the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. And if you use that Q&A box for questions, everyone can see the answers to your questions. If you have that question, many others probably do too, so please don't hesitate to ask. And finally, please note that today's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. The information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code, nor constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of today's topic, please do call 213-978-0738 during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4 p.m. to speak to a DCR representative. Now it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce today's subject matter expert, Mandy Tingler. Mandy Tingler is a business development executive with 13 years experience in sales and marketing and is currently the Chief Commercial Officer for Profit Brands and founder of the Women's Canna Awards. Mandy has served on the board of directors for the National Cannabis Industry Association and has continued to be a voice for women in business, civil rights, and social justice reform. With a BA in psychology and a master's of science in education, Mandy helps cannabis businesses tap into their target market's needs and perceptions. She is skilled in business and product development, creating new revenue streams, guerrilla marketing, and large-scale conference and event planning. She educated on brand marketing in the cannabis industry, including for the Sacramento and Oakland social equity programs. Widely considered a brand whisperer, Mandy has successfully launched 20 different award-winning products, including for brands like Conception Nursery, Natura, Kikoko, Profit Brands, and more. Please help me welcome Mandy and take it away. You are on mute.
Yes, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me here to teach today. It's a real honor to be able to share my work history experience and impart that knowledge on anybody who may need it. Building a brand in cannabis, especially here in California, is a very serious business to get into. And so it's very important to me that anybody who is in the lane of starting a brand, whether it's a dispensary or a distribution hub or a actual brand that's selling into the market, that you enter in and feel like you have some footing to stand on and really launch into your fullest potential right from the jump. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. By all means, like Dale said, we're going to have a Q&A at the end, but don't be hesitant to jump in and put things in the chat if you would like to, and I will do my best to get to everybody. Again, thank you so much, and let's get going. Maybe. Here we go. All right. So today we are going to talk a lot about the defining of your brand, how you craft a sales pitch, which is incredibly important because you want to make sure when you go in to meet with that dispensary buyer that you don't waste a second of their time. You want to be able to create your unique selling proposition, or what we call a USP in the marketing lane. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of your branding, your packaging, and how you manage your post-purchase consumer engagement, which means how you keep in touch with your customer after they bought your product. And then last, but certainly not least, the marketing channels to follow through on, and compliance, because, well, let's be honest, there's a lot of rules here. All right, so let's talk about defining your brand. Everybody's probably got an idea of what their brand is going to look like, or maybe a brand name, or just maybe a feeling of what your brand is going to resonate with people like. All of these are little elements of putting together the beginning stages of what your brand will be. It's a collection of elements that form your brand's identity. It's who, think of your brand as a persona. Think of it as a person. If you close your eyes and you envision what characteristics, personality traits, what they would eat or do if your company was a person, and then really start leaning into that consumer as your target audience, right? We're going to talk about a little bit, what is your brand going to do, right? How is your company going to identify with its customer? 9 times out of 10, a brand that is successful in the market has evoked some kind of feeling in its customer. You know that saying that you won't always remember what someone says, but you'll always remember how they made you feel, right? A brand has that same kind of capability. It conveys your company's values. It talks about, it gives the impression of what you stand on. If it's a product in the market that's a topical and it's supposed to help ease body pain and maybe alleviate arthritis, well, you're going to try to market your packaging towards a consumer that is going to be looking for something that maybe has a little bit larger font, because perhaps senior citizens don't have as great eyesight. Maybe it needs to be a jar that's very easy to open, and that you've done a lot of R&D on the type of lid that you have for that particular product to make it easy to open for people who do have arthritis, right? Things of that nature takes a lot of consideration when you're building your brand. And then also, one of the things that really sticks out in the consumer mind, especially lately, but this is going to be a test of time type, or it's proven the test of time, which is, has your brand identified its value system, and does the consumer identify with that? So there's a lot of conversation out there around social equity or social justice reform. And right now in our industry, it's a very big set of topics. And so it's something that the consumer is becoming more educated about. And frequently, a lot of equity companies are coming back with like some kind of goodwill offering, which a customer is enthusiastic about supporting, right? Let's talk about the features of a strong brand. I mean, we all have our favorite brands out there in the world. I mean, we can think about some of the most iconic ones of all time, right? We can think about Coca-Cola, Nike, Pepsi. Look at any brand of cereal that you remember from your childhood. All of these things are evidence of a very strong brand. They all have something that they've established that makes them unique. It makes them clearly visible as a brand that stands apart from everyone else. One of the brands that we have emphasized here, which has just done a phenomenal job in branding and really was the first fully branded brand in cannabis, which is Cookies. That C right there in the middle of the screen, it's something that actually is known around the world. People who don't even use cannabis are starting to recognize cookies. And it's because they have gone into multifaceted lanes. They've actually become a true mogul brand. It's on clothing, it's albums, it's on skateboards, it's all over the place, all around the world, and it's become synonymous with cannabis. It's clear, their company logo, they're blue, the cookie's blue. It's very close to the Tiffany's blue, but if you notice, it's just a little bit shade off. And there's color palettes that make people remember a brand. So forever and always, this is their clear, consistent blue. It's recognizable. And then on top of that, cookies has also been synonymous with quality, right? And entertainment. They're really synonymous with parties and having fun and that hip hop lifestyle. That's the core values of this brand. It's just undeniably consistent and clear, but very unique. Oh, that's weird. All right. It wants to make me use a different button to change the screen. Let's talk a little bit about crafting your sales pitch, because getting an appointment with a dispensary buyer is a big deal. And they have limited time. They hear hundreds of pitches every single week. And how are you going to use your unique selling points to stand out and get them to remember you? One of the most important things outside of your sales pitch, though, is learning who the decision maker is and figuring out what their needs are before you get into that meeting. There's a number of ways that you can do this, but you're going to deal with one of two people when you go into that meeting. You're going to either be dealing with an owner who's acting as the buyer or the purchasing manager that day, or you're going to be dealing with an employee who's been hired to be the purchasing manager. Both of them are going to be the gatekeepers of the core value of purchasing in that store. And it's important to ask around before you go into that meeting and do your research. Look at their online menu, right? Is this a store that really carries a lot of incredibly high dose items? Or is this a store that seems to be more wellness oriented and carries a lot of alternative cannabinoid products, perhaps a lot of other nutraceutical elements are incorporated into the products that they have on the menu. Maybe they have a very high sales volume of edibles, and this is a product that you have on your menu. So you want to make sure you're into this high volume edibles store. It's important to look at what that store's needs are. If you have a store that doesn't typically service the wellness community and you are a wellness brand, you're probably going to have your time better served focusing on dispensary sales that are leaning toward that target consumer audience, right? So it's important to establish what that store's need is and align it with whether or not your product and your brand is in congruence with what they're seeking. When you go into meet with the buyers, the things that you're going to also look at and you want to include in your sales pitch is your brand story. You want to talk about your product quality, of course, your price point, but you also want to make sure that you don't neglect discussing how you as the brand are going to support your brand in the store. A lot of the retailers get pitched all day long about why the product is really great, why they should put it on the shelf, but they fail to talk about how they're going to help the consumer sell through in the store and how they're going to get the customers to pay attention to this brand. It's also important to negotiate or be open to discussing your payment terms. A lot of stores right now are expecting some sort of term. I usually encourage new brands to go in asking for COD at minimum on your very first order to make sure that they are good for the cash, and then tell them you can be open to discussing terms after the first order. Most stores are really good with that because there's been a lot of issues in the market with stores not paying their bill. And we don't want you guys to get caught up in that sort of a situation, of course. And then it's also really important to outline how your product is going to stand out in your product category. In the flower lane, it's fierce. There is the best of the best flower that you're up against in the state of California. We have well-established brands with cultivators who have been doing this since legacy days. And, you're going into a very highly saturated category, but it's also the biggest category in this space. So it's important to decide how you're going to differentiate yourself. And when you sit down and you really figure out what that store is looking for, what it seems that their core values are, does that align with your brand? And then you take those two elements and you decide what pitch you're going to go in and give them based upon what you think their needs are. Let's talk a little bit about perspectives when you go in there. Right now, there's a lot of what I'm calling a return to legacy purchasing philosophy. A lot of stores and customers are getting really educated and developing opinions on products and branding, and they identify or want to support those who helped us get here today. And so consider when you are developing your packaging for your product, if you have been a legacy operator or if you have ties to the legacy roots of the industry, to say so somewhere in your branding, whether it's a little certification that you line up or something along those lines. But it's really important too that you are aware that customers have a very strong sense of when a brand is not genuine, when they're quote cashing in, right? When they have a lot of hype around them, so to speak. There's a lot of new flashy brands that come in into the market, and they have some very proprietary information or some very proprietary formulation or a device, and it's kind of a flash in the pan moment. And consumers are starting to get kind of hip to the script about that sort of thing. And then last but not least, um, always emphasize your product quality, because quality is always king. I always say that there's a lot of cheap weed out there, but the good weed is going to sell. Doesn't matter if it's, a half ounce for $25. Okay. If it's not good and it's sitting next to something that has outstanding quality, 9 times out of 10, the customer is going to look back and forth, and always that good weed will always sell. Let's talk about picking your customer segment. All right. This is identifying who your target audience is going to be, and then how do you go after them, right? So, different target customers have different needs. They have different hobbies they care about and have different core values. I like to talk about a couple of different key consumer segments that we see in cannabis purchasing habits. We have like your cultural traditionalists. These are people who are like your hardcore stoners, right? They really love like weed culture. And then you move into your connoisseurs. These are your top shelf smokers. These are the ones who are always testing out the new thing and talking with others about what their experience was and really sinking into the new elements and nuances, kind of like wine people do for cannabis, right? And then there's, your segment market of wellness seekers. These are the folks who are really truly using cannabis every single day in different elements of their life. Maybe it's topically, maybe it's different alternative cannabinoids being taken perhaps in the form of a tincture. Maybe it's varieties of consumption methods, from capsules to suppositories. There could be a ton of different reasons that folks would fall into the wellness realm. Some people would say perhaps that even, which is the number one reason people are purchasing cannabis right now, is still being said for sleep purposes. I consider that a wellness element. And so a lot of sleep targeting products are starting to show up in the marketplace. And senior citizens is another really great growing segment in the market. It's exciting to me that we have such a strong education out there in the world where seniors are feeling more and more comfortable leaning toward cannabis for pain management or sleep management, as opposed to other alternatives that they've been limited by in the past. And so for me, or for you as a brand operator, you really need to sit and really truly identify the persona of the consumer that you are trying to market your brand for, and make every decision in your brand based upon that end consumer and what you're trying to go after. A lot of brands make the mistake of saying that everybody is my customer. It's not true. Of course, you want to build a product that everyone can use, right? But you are not targeting every person in the world to buy your product. It's not reasonable. Everybody might hear about it, but let's go briefly back to the whole cookies situation. Cookies is a high THC, hip hop backed and apparel backed brand. This is a iconic brand, but it's not for everyone. My mom's not wearing a cookies hoodie, right? Senior citizens are not usually going to be out rocking that for the most part. But and cookies isn't marketing to that target audience, right? They're marketing to like 22 to say 35-year-olds who love hip hop music and that are really into like hip hop culture and weed smoking and all of that. It's a very targeted like type of audience, and then it radiates out from that audience to the rest of the world. So be thinking in the development of your brand, who is your brand consumer, and then embody that when you are making decisions for everything from the packaging to your logo design. Now let's talk about your selling proposition. Okay. So this is an actual science. This is marketing science, right? It's really important to create a strong USP because again, this goes back to your consumer's behavior. What does your consumer do as their hobby? What is their shopping list like at the grocery store? Who are they hanging out with on the weekend? What Instagram pages are they following? What are they buying when they're with their friends? What are they telling their friends that they're excited about? Think about all these things. What's the core value system of that buyer? Do they go to the gym all the time? Do they like to work on cars? What does your customer do? Right? And then also, you need to be taking into consideration market trends, right? What is like mainstream media propositioning now? I find a lot of my companies that I do advisory consulting work for, we play a lot with this on our social media. We like to use a lot of like spin on what's happening in current events in the media and then somehow tie it back to a hook on getting someone to watch what we're doing on our social media page. It's also really important whenever you can to pay attention to data collection groups. There's a lot of different companies in the industry that have tons of access to data that's happening at the cash register in the retail store. It shows the consumer trend habits. And while some of these companies are a fee to access this information, they do offer free newsletters that you can sign up for, and they send them out all the time. So you don't get the real time data, but you get it pretty fairly close to when they're getting that information. So it's definitely worth it. Some of the sites that I would encourage you to go to would be like, oh gosh, Dale, give me a couple of the really good sites that we could send people to for data. I'm drawing a blank right now. I totally just had a list and it just flew out of my brain as soon as I said that.
Yeah, I'll think about that and drop a couple in the chat for you. Angela's already starting for us with Headset.io. There's different
Headset. There you go.
yeah, there's different subscription costs depending. Yeah,
Yes, there is, but you can sign up for the newsletters, and those are free, and they are riddled with great information. So it is worth it.
perfect.
And a lot of these companies too, they offer a social equity and social justice impacted discount. So be sure to ask for that. It's usually like a 20% discount on their fee if you are able to sign up for it. But if nothing else, please, please, please do not underestimate the power of their newsletters. They are great. And then I also encourage you, as far as market trends, go to conferences and listen to the keynote speaker that they have on stage, and then pick 4 panels at every conference whenever you have the opportunity to go in and listen to that pertain to your business, because there is great little nuggets of information that you'll pull out of there that other people won't get because they didn't bother to attend. And then last, but certainly not least, I can't recommend highly enough, find yourself a mentor, somebody out there who's willing to take that phone call from you and give you a little bit of nugget of the experience that they've had while they've been building their brand, because it will be worth its weight in gold to avoid pitfalls. I'm telling you, one of the biggest things that I have done over the years when I'm consulting for brands is I help them save so much money because I have learned the hard way. I joke all the time. I say I've had a probably $250 million cannabis marketing and sales education in this industry now. And mentorship, it's key. So get yourself somebody, please. Let's talk a little bit about current market trends. Some of you may be surprised to hear that the vape category is almost equal to flower sales across the state. And this is a trend that's rippling across the industry nationwide, actually. Flower has always been king for the longest time. And now these two are like neck and neck. And then what's following next is pre-rolls. People are loving the fact that they're wanting convenience, right? They want that instant gratification. It's right there. They don't have to roll it themselves. They don't have to have all of the grinder and the paper and the crutches and the rolling tray and all of the accessories that you need to roll. They can just pull it out of the jar or the tube and go. We're also seeing a lot of lean towards, in the pre-roll lane, more people buying infused pre-rolls than flower pre-rolls. And the reason being is they're seeking the value of the higher potency we're seeing right now. Another interesting market trend is alternative cannabinoids. So it's not just about THC anymore, folks. We're talking about THCV, CBG, CBN. We're talking about, there's what, well, a couple hundred different cannabinoids now and growing that we are just learning about and figuring out what they do and how we can utilize them as medicine. And then another really interesting element is senior citizens, again, like I mentioned earlier, are really sinking their teeth into edibles, literally, no pun intended. And of course, topicals and tinctures. They're discreet and feel more medicinal. And then last, and not surprising to me because so many of my women friends are out there using cannabis, but women are actually making up somewhere between 42 and 45% of cannabis consumption right now. And it's growing. So that's exciting to me because there used to be such a significant stigma between men and women's consumption of cannabis. And so I'm really, really excited to see that change. All right, so let's talk about what your consumers' behaviors are. What are their core values when they walk up to that counter, and what do they need? They need you to tell them a couple of things right when they walk up. The price, the value of the product. Why is it priced like that? How is that product going to work? And does your package clearly communicate the delivery method that it is? One of the hard lessons I learned a long time ago was I put this really beautiful vape line into the market. It was gorgeous. Man, I was so proud of the pictures that it all, or the packaging, and the quality was just absolutely outstanding. But we neglected to discern what type of vape it was. Such a big, big, big mistake. So instead of it saying that it was an all-in-one vape, which it was inside this opaque packaging, it just said vape. And people didn't know if it was a cartridge or a full-blown vape. So we had to go back out and re-sticker everything, but just really clearly decipher what the delivery method is for your consumer. And then last, but certainly not least, again, you want to identify the consumer needs in your segment. If this is a topical line and you're really marketing towards senior citizens, you want to make sure that your vessels are something that are easy to open, right? Thinking along these lines. A lot of people discard how important your product packaging functionality is. There's a lot of edibles companies out there that wanted to do eco-friendly packaging because they're like, oh, our customer, our persona is eco-friendly. So they get these great little tins, right? And the tins are incredibly difficult for people to open a lot of the time. So just keep those things in mind when you're making your brand decisions. So let's talk more about your USP. It needs to be a statement that clearly explains how the brand is going to stand out from its competition. What does it do well? What does it just completely execute on that no one else does as well as your company? Who cares about that, right? Who is the customer? Why do they want it? This is what all has to come together when you're starting to develop your USP. And this USP needs to incorporate your brand story, the quality of the product, and then, of course, the price point. This is what I like to call it's like our trifecta at our company. So I'm going to use profit as an example. So the brand that we work on is Profit Brands. It's based on the life story of Luke Scarmazzo and Ricardo Montes, who spent a combined total of 25 years in the federal prison system because they opened a medical dispensary in Modesto in 2004. That's their story, right? Um, Luke just came home, got out of prison. He served 15 of his 22 years of his sentence, and he wanted to drop right back into the industry. He did not know how he was going to get started. And then we met, and I helped him put together the bottom two pieces of his brand, the product, right? Which is a live resin vape line. It's labeled right this time. A small batch craft boutique flower line that has a very limited flower drop, and it's grown by one of the best, most awarded cultivators in the state. And our extraction out of our live resin is the best quality, all natural, organic live resin that you can make in the market. And our pre-roll line is a top shelf, triple infused indoor flower pre-roll line. And all of these products are phenomenal, and they're priced so competitively that we did our research in the market. We knew who the top dogs were and what they were selling a comparable price product for. And we went in and we met them where they were at, or we beat them on price point. So we have the story, we have the outstanding product, and we have the outstanding price point because we did our research. And this is what is going to be your secret USP. Dale, any thoughts or anything so far? Am I
Doing
keeping on?
great. We're about halfway through. And
Perfect.
yeah, I would invite anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in either chat or the Q&A.
Yep. All right, I'll keep it moving. So when you're designing your sales pitch, you're going to include your unique sales, or the unique selling position, right? And then you are going to really have to go back and remember all of the research that you did about the account, right? And you're going to take all of those different elements. Is this a store that is looking for a high THC vape? What do they currently sell the most of in their vape category? Do they have a lot of live resin already? How am I going to pitch my product in comparison to all the other live resins that they have on their shelf? And you really want to make sure that you are standing on whatever you're saying. Be very careful to overprom or that you don't overpromise or make claims about your product that you cannot back up. Buyers will call you out on that, and that's a really uncomfortable conversation to have. So yeah, false claims, be very, very careful. It's okay to say you don't know an answer outside of trying to make something up. Let's talk a little bit about analyzing brand position. When you're in the store, again, this is a lot of research you need to do before you go in. You want to look at the competitors that are on the shelf. Are they selling through quite a bit? I usually encourage brands to go into the store as a customer before you ever go in as your brand. Go in there and see what the buying experience is like as a customer. Ask lots of questions about the product categories that you plan to go into. Ask them things like, what's your top selling brand? What makes it your top selling brand? What does that brand do to stand out in your store? Why does your bud tending staff think that this product sells the most? And get their opinions and thoughts on what it is that is making that particular SKU in that category a success, and lean into that for your own. Again, you also need to look at the target market that you're trying to go after. And then also you want to look at that store that you're trying to get your brand into and look at what kind of marketing channels that they're using to advertise their store. Are they a store that does a lot of digital marketing online? Are they using a lot of billboards? Are they doing a lot of social media? Do they have an email marketing list or maybe a rewards program that they're offering for their customers? What strategies are they using to continue to get customers to come back to their location, and figure out how you're going to participate in that as a part of your pitch. All right, which kind of takes us into the branding and packaging and post purchase engagement. This is, again, where you drive your customer sales and how do you get them to come back, right? And that goes back to that like triangle, that trifecta. The brand story will almost always get a customer to buy the product at least once, right? They want to support a great story. But if the product quality and the price point are off, there is a significant likelihood that they will not purchase again. We absolutely need to make sure that they want to buy this product again. And so part of that is creating like the consumer experience. A lot of that starts with your branding and your packaging, and how does that help a consumer decide to buy the product or not? Is it easy to read, clearly labeled? Does the color palette strike the mood that your product would be used for? And is it memorable, right? But really, even more so, you want to talk about how you're going to engage with that customer after they buy your product. When a customer comes into the dispensary and they buy your whatever it is that you're selling, let's call it a pre-roll pack, right? They buy your pre-roll pack. How did they reach that decision? And are you able to reach that person again after they buy your product? And you can do this in a multitude of ways. Number one, I like to have my brand ambassadors, or I put demo tables up in the dispensaries as frequently as possible. And one of the things that I task my brand ambassadors with doing is I will give away a sticker or like a lanyard or some little tiny tchotchke with my branding on it to every single person that comes through that door. And I also ask them to follow us on social media. And if I can get that follower on social media, now they know what I'm doing online, right? If I can also get their email address somehow, if there's a quick little place where they can scan a QR code and type in their email address, and I just captured that database or that into my database, now I can continue to rain on them in their inbox and on social media, right? And then also, you want to make sure that your packaging includes some sort of opportunity for them to reach out to you. Your branding needs to be singing to your customer as they walk out the door. So always remember to put some sort of way that they can engage with you, whether it's your website, a QR code for your link tree or your social media accounts, but you always want to be able to have that consumer feel like they can tap you or get back in touch with you at any point. Another really great thing to lean into when you start working in your relationships with your dispensaries is ask them if they have customer rewards programs, because if they do, you want to participate in that. A lot of dispensaries have special days where like they have Flower Friday incentives where maybe all their flour is on a certain percentage off. You want to make sure your brand, especially the first few months that you're in a store, participates in those sort of customer reward program incentives, because your customers are going to start getting used to seeing your branding on those ads. And subliminally, even if they aren't buying your product that day, they're recognizing the branding and what that consumer engagement is looking like subconsciously and becoming aware of who you are without even really putting in a lot of effort. So it's worth it in a lot of ways. And it's really important too when you're thinking about your post purchase engagement with your customer, thinking about the rule of three. Customers are 75% more likely to repurchase your products if they have interfaced or visually seen your brand around at least 3 times after that post-purchase engagement. It's a lot of times why when you sign up for some service online, you get a welcome email and then you get a follow-up reminder with some great incentive for you to go ahead and make that purchase. And then you get that, hey, just a reminder that we think you're such a great customer. Thank you so much for buying. Here's another promotional discount for coming back in, or here's another cool activation or thing that we're doing. It's a way of just constantly tapping and raining on your customers so that they never forget that you are there and that you care about their purchase. All right, marketing channels and compliance. There's 3 types of media. And the first is your owned media. This could be in the form of like your website. It's content that is created and owned by you. It could be a podcast you have. It could be your own social media page. It could be a book that you've written or a manual. It could be any of this specific content that you create that's controlled by your company. Then there's paid content. This is content that is paid for free. This or for fees, sorry, not free, for a fee. Things like magazine ads, billboards. A lot of times people will see executive cover stories on certain magazines. A lot of that is paid media. There's also a lot of like online infomercial style type things. It's all paid, right? Commercials on podcasts and things of that nature, paid media. Important to go find out if when you're using paid media, it's important to spend carefully. I highly recommend that you go with an organization that specializes in paid media content. It can be pricey, but if you have an experienced media company behind you, they will steer you down the right path and you will not regret it. It usually on paid media to see a really strong ROI though, and I'm just setting the stage and expectation for everybody that it usually takes a good 3 to 5 months to really see strong ROI on paid media. Earned media, which is everybody's favorite. This is media content that's created and published by third parties, and it's done usually out of recognition. This is, when journalists reach out and they want to do a cover story on something about you, about a product, about something exciting that your company is doing, your core value, a comeback story, something exciting that you're honoring one of your outstanding employees for, those sorts of things. It's exciting media. It's the goodwill stuff, right? For the story that they really get excited about telling in earned media. So thinking about those 3 little silos when you're talking about how you're marketing out into the world and how you're communicating. And I totally forgot about this lovely little slide here. So you can kind of see, move this out of my way here. The different varieties for paid media includes like social media ads, sponsored content, billboards. This is definitely where like paid influencers and special events and things like that pop up. And then your earned media, again, it's like word of mouth. People are hearing about you. You're getting, viral online because your company went out and did some beach cleanup day. And afterward, you rewarded everybody or gifted everybody one of your products or something like that. It's how you're spreading the goodwill, right? And then it also, leads us over more into like the owned media, the messaging that we send out into the world on behalf of our own company and how we're communicating who we are to the world. Why does this stick on me sometimes? There we go. Marketing channels that are absolutely essential. Your website is who you are. It's how you connect with the world, and it's how you're going to be backlinking to everybody and everything that you do. So it's important that you really have somebody paying a lot of attention to your website. It's also important that you schedule time out to update your website frequently. Our company is on a monthly cadence. We sit down once a month. We go through the entire website. We decide if there's any edits or changes or updates that need to be done. And we get those done really quick. And we also have to talk about our direct marketing. Like, how are we going to be going into the consumer marketplace and what are we doing to help customer engagement? A lot of times, dispensaries love when you come in and send someone from the company to give product information and talk to customers to bring the awareness forward about who your brand is and what it's doing and what products you have available in the market. This could be Something also like you're sending email marketing to customers. Perhaps the store is sharing an email marketing list, or maybe they asked you for you to create an ad for them to put into their email marketing campaigns. Stores also really appreciate when you create templates for them to use. A lot of the brands out there fail to do this. If you can sit down and create content for your dispensary to share on their social media or their email marketing, they will love you for it. And suddenly you're going to start seeing your brand all over the place because you just made their job easier. The more you plug and play for them, the more you get to play with the customer almost every single time. We talked a little bit about the earned media and paid advertising, so I'm not going to lean into that anymore. Let's talk a little bit about the posting of compliant content. It's tricky in the weed game. I lovingly and sarcastically, but also honestly say that nobody in this industry is able to escape a hater. So you have to be very careful when you are marketing out there that you never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever post a price, not even a percentage off discount, okay? You even if the product, is 50% off, steer clear of that as much as humanly possible. You also want to steer clear of images of people consuming cannabis. You could do things like have people holding it, right? You could have someone holding a joint, but you don't want to have them smoking it. I don't know. You don't want to use cannabis related hashtags. Get creative with spelling things like phonetically, or using maybe the at symbol when you use the A, or finding some other creative reference when you are doing your hashtags, or even coming up with your username. And then, of course, too much activity can get your account flagged. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You might create some really outstanding post that's going absolutely viral on your page, and suddenly Instagram comes in and says, we got to take this away. So be really careful to follow the most basic rules with the price. Make sure that you're not showing the actual consumption of the product, and watch your engagement when you're coming in there. There's a lot of people who have a different rule of thumb about how they handle people in the chat. If you have a lot of words popping up in the chat immediately, like say the first 30 minutes of the post, that sometimes can get flagged. Older comments, when people come in and chime in and use like weed or marijuana or cannabis in the chat later, it doesn't seem to get flagged as easily. So older comments on older posts, I don't really worry about so much. All right, and it looks like we are at the tail end.
Yes, and a friendly reminder that there are some amazing courses on branding and marketing already in the LMS, and this video will also be found there at some point after this class, most likely in the next week or two. You'll be able to find this video. So I do have some questions for you, and
Yeah.
thank you. That was really informative. I appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
Mandy.
Yeah.
So let's go into, we can, it's this is a more advanced class. It is assuming that you already have your story, your branding, and your marketing figured out, and getting on the shelf, being one of the products that are not just sold, but sold through with
Mhm.
repetition over and over again is the goal.
Yeah. Right.
What are some strategies for like both negotiating the shelf space with
Right.
dispensaries, but also, propagating that sell through?
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about when you get through the buyer and they've made a commitment to purchase your product and put it on the shelf. Before your product even lands there, you need to have a secondary conversation about how we're going to collaborate together on getting your customer aware of our existence, right? And that comes in a whole lot of forms. Um, you have to be cognizant and very honest and realistic with your buyer about your company's ability to financially contribute to this this campaign that you now have to launch in your store, right? And it's going to be different for everybody. If you're going into a store that has a very high volume of customers, you're going to want to find out, like, can we do a demo? Or maybe even if you're fortunate enough to be able to do this, do a brand takeover when you're launching in a store. One of our brand's very favorite things to do when we have a chain of new accounts is I tell them, give me your, top 2 stores throughout your entire chain of stores, and we want to do a takeover, which consists of me bringing all my staff. We bring in like a taco truck and we offer free taco plates to everybody who buys profit that day while we're there. And then we load them up with merch and, stickers and all kinds of goodwill. And they never forget us after that. Right. And then we just put our brand ambassadors back in the store. What I like to do is when I'm having my conversation with the buyer or the store owner about what my marketing intentions will be for you, I talk to them about how every purchase order that they do with me, I will guarantee at least one in-store demonstration. And so that means that if you just bought another round of products, you better believe that I'm showing up within the next 2 to 3 weeks to ensure that that product sell through and the customer awareness is happening, right? It's the brand's job to educate the customer about how your product works. It's also a great opportunity to show up into these dispensaries as much as you can and talk with the staff, because the staff have to learn how you speak to your product. They have to get really comfortable with your story. They have to hear your enthusiasm. They have to feel your energy around your product, because the way you speak about it, the things that get you amped about your product, the story that you brought this thing to market for, like whatever the buzzwords are, they have to hear it from you, because that is what they will carry forward to the customer. And so when you're in your pitch and you're talking about my fantastic product and my great brand story and my great price point, don't forget that fourth piece, which is the customer sell through, the customer education. Getting in front of your bud tenders. If the store will allow you to engage in what I like to call a bud tender education day, it's where you get to go behind the scenes of the counter and you get to have face-to-face sit downs with all the bud tenders. Some stores will let you meet all their staff in one big sitting, and other stores will make you come in on a lunch break and meet with one at a time for 2 or 3 hours. But you have to do it. It's worth its weight in gold, because the connections alone in this industry are what helps your brand move, right? You're going to either connect on a friend level with these bud tenders, or you're going to inspire them with your story or your product quality or your price point, or they're just going to sell the shit out of it because they like you, whatever the reason is. If you don't get in there, they're not going to learn about the soul of your product. They're not going to know how to tell its top sell points. They could have customers coming in right then and there in front of you that are asking for products that your product category fits, and you're like, this is my customer, and they don't know you exist.
Yeah.
And so you have to get in front of them as often and as fast as you can. Right? And just always remember, purchase order to demonstration. And I usually in the first month, I'll try to get in there 2 or 3 times if I can, because I want to saturate. I want to also leave something behind, whether it's a product information postcard that says, here's my brand story on one side, and then on the back says, these are all of our awesome products, and here's how you find us, right? Having something that you can leave behind, because when you walk away, you want to make sure they don't forget you, right?
Indeed. Yeah, and that's, the people don't care so much until they see that you care about them, and so it's really just that investment strategy, and
Uh-huh.
all a business is that person to person contact, and so
Yeah.
the best way to imprint your company's DNA on the bud tenders, the retail specialists that serve those customers, and then it's also an opportunity when you're in that retail environment to hear what customers are asking for, how they're relating. That is market research that is chef's kiss right there. So just keeping your fingers on the pulse. Uh, what consumer segments are underserved
Mm, yep.
currently in your observation right now? And maybe what are overserved? Like what maybe you should shy away from?
Um, Overserved flour. Flour is just saturated and it's so incredibly competitive. It's when I do brand consulting and my client comes to me and says, "Hey Mandy, we have just this great genetic that everyone is going to love and it's just like no one has anything like it," right? I myself have spoken these words. Um Everybody says that. Okay. There's nothing unique about that. And let's be really honest, there is some outstanding weed in this world. Okay. Really, I've been fortunate enough to have lots of it. But when you transition from flower nugs to a manufactured product that truly no one else has created, now you just became really interesting and unique, right? Also, a manufactured good suddenly has less competition because there's not as many like you. Even a pre roll and a vape, very distinguishable items, right? They're categories 2 and 3, neck and neck, pressing every single week in sales. If the flower market itself could have feelings, it would be a little nervous right now because the consumer market is growing. There's never going to be less people using cannabis today than or in the future than there are today, right? The least amount of people using cannabis is happening right now. It's growing and growing and growing and growing. But consumer habits and consumption habits are showing that people want more discretion and more convenience, and flour is just not it.
Mhm. Have you seen anything that is either selling through or selling out more readily? Any segments that you've noticed
Yeah.
that happening?
Yeah, the alternative cannabinoid lane is very interesting because as we start to uncover what each cannabinoid is capable of doing, let's talk about THCV for example. Most dispensary buyers will tell you that in manufactured goods, anything with THCV is a very fast seller because it's a little bit less volume, or it's not produced in such a high volume, for one. Number two, it doesn't appear in every single genetic. It's not THC. It's definitely a cannabinoid that is only in certain genetics. And then in certain genetics, it's got a much higher yield, right, than others. Other alternative cannabinoids like CBN, CBG, people are very excited about these. The CBN cannabinoid is said to help enhance or induce sleep. CBG is supposed to be like a super cannabinoid. I always call it the multivitamin of cannabinoids. It's really just kind of like an overall wellness, little bit of a mood boost. But one of the things that really gets me excited about the alternative cannabinoid category is it's spanning into everything. You can get it in beverages, tinctures. We're finding some of it in vape, but people are getting really crafty with it. They're doing like inhalers or um I've even seen this one thing where you like kind of Vicks that you would like inhale if your nostril was clogged. I've seen like in a little nasal like spray type thing. There's a lot of really unique delivery methods that are coming out. And you got to think about discretion and convenience.
Indeed. And also for those medical consumers that are still out there, you can't, for instance, throw up a nasal spray or a transdermal patch. There's definitely a multitude of reasons and needs and pain points to fill in this industry and in the market segment. And I'm really grateful to you today. Mandy Tingler, thank you for all
You.
of your insights and this information. And thank you all for attending this informative webinar, which was offered by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulations Social Equity Program. This webinar recording will soon be available on DCR's website, cannabis.la.gov. I'm sorry, lacity.org. That's cannabis.lacity.org. And if you have any questions on accessing your LMS account, please do email dcr.sep@lacity.org. I will drop that in the chat in just a moment. You can also still get that professional business coach, as Mandy so eloquently put it earlier. You really need to find your mentor. And there are just some phenomenal mentors that are also sponsored by the city of LA BLC resources. So please do make sure that you find your coaches and keep visiting them. These are experts in the industry to get you to the next level wherever you are now. They will help you unstick your stuck. Also, the next webinar, please mark your calendars. I'm excited for June 3rd, entitled BLC Resources Tour with Dr. Imani Brown, and I will be facilitating. Learn how to access all these resources on June 3rd. There's probably more available than even you've realized, or just a friendly reminder to tap back in because they are constantly being refreshed and updated. And I just want to remind you to take advantage of what is here for you. All right, with that, I am Dale Sky Jones with Oaksterdam University. We are grateful for your time and attention today. Thank you so much again for joining us. Please have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care.